Welcome to the 1000 Nights and 1 Night. Now, when it was the 792nd night, she continued, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when Hassan went in unto the king's daughter, and did away with her maidenhead, he enjoyed her with exceeding joy, and affection for her waxed in him, and he redoubled in love-longing for her. So he recited the lines aforesaid. Now the princesses were standing at the door, and when they heard these verses, they said to her, O king's daughter, hearest thou the words of this mortal? How canst thou blame us, seeing that he maketh poetry for love of thee, and indeed he hath so done 1,000 times? When she heard this, she rejoiced and was glad and felt happy, and Hassan abode with her 40 days in all solace and delight, joyous and happiness, plight, while the maidens renewed festivities for him every day, and overwhelmed him with bounty and presents and rarities. And the king's daughter became reconciled to her sojourn amongst them, and forgot her kith and kin. At the end of the 40 days, Hassan saw in a dream one night his mother mourning for him, and indeed her bones were wasted, and her body had waxed shrunken, and her complexion had yellowed, and her favour had changed the while he was in excellent case. When she saw him in this state, she said to him, O my son, O Hassan, how is it that thou livest thy worldly life at thine ease, and forgettest me? Look at my plight, slight thy loss. I do not forget thee, nor will my tongue cease to name thy name till I die. And I have made thee a tomb in my house, that I may never forget thee. Would heaven I knew if I shall live, O my son, to see thee by my side, and if we shall ever again foregather as we were. Thereupon Hassan awoke from sleep, weeping and wailing, and the tears railed down his cheeks like rain, and he became mournful and melancholy. His tears dried not till sleep visited him, but he had no rest, and no patience was left to him. When he arose, the princesses came in unto him, and gave him good morrow, and made merry with him, as their wont, but he paid no heed to them. So he asked his wife concerning his case, and she said, I ken not. Quoth they, Question him of his condition. So she went up to him and said, What aileth thee, O my lord? Whereupon he moaned and he groaned, and he told her what he had seen in his dream, and repeated these 2 couplets. Indeed, afflicted sore are we, and all distraught, seeking for union, yet we find no way. And love's calamity upon us grow, and love through light and heaviest weight doth weigh. His wife repeated to the princesses what he said, and they, hearing the verses, had pity on him, and said to him, In Allah's name, do as thou wilt, for we may not hinder thee from visiting thy mother. Nay, we will help thee to thy wish by what means we may. But it behoveth us that thou desertest not, but visit us, though it be only once a year. And he answered, To hear is to obey. Be your behest on my head and eyes. Then they arose forthright, and making him ready victual for the voyage, equipped the bride for him with raiment and ornaments, and everything of price, such as defy description, and they bestowed on him gifts and presents, with pens of ready writers lack power to set forth. Then they beat the magical kettle drum, and up came the dromedaries from all sides. They chose of them such as could carry all the gear that they had prepared. Amongst the rest, 25 chests of gold and 50 of silver, and mounting Hassan and his bride on others, rode with them 3 days, wherein they accomplished a march of 3 months. Then they bade them farewell, and addressed themselves to return. Whereupon his sister, the youngest damsel, threw herself on Hassan's neck, and wept till she fainted. When she came to herself, she repeated these 2 couplets. Ne'er dawn the severance day on any wise that robs of sleep these heavy-lidded eyes. From us and thee it hath fair union torn, its waste our force, and makes our forms its prize. Her verses finished, she farewelled him, straightly charging him, when as he should have come to his native land, and have foregathered with his mother, and set his heart at ease, to fail not of visiting her once in every 6 months, and saying, If aught grieve thee, or thou aught of vexation, beat the Magian's kettle drum, whereupon the dromedaries shall come to thee, and do thou mount and return to us, and persist not in staying away. He swore thus to do, and conjured them to go home. So they returned to the palace, mourning for this separation from him, especially the youngest, with whom no rest would stay, nor would patience her call obey, but she wept night and day. Thus it was with them. But as regards Hassan and his wife, they fared on by day and night over plain and desert, side and valley, and stony heights, though noontide glare and dawn's soft light. And Allah decreed them safety, so that they reached Bassorah city without hindrance, and made their camels kneel at the door of his house. Hassan then dismissed the dromedaries, and going up to the door to open it, heard his mother weeping, and in a faint strain from a heart worn with parting pain, and on fire with consuming bane, reciting these couplets. How shall he taste of sleep who lacks repose, who wakes a night when all in slumber wone? He owned wealth and family and fame, yet fared from house and home in exile lone. Live coal beneath his ribs he bears for bane, and mighty longing mightier ne'er was known. Passion hath seized him, passion mastered him, yet is he constant while he maketh moan. His case for love proclaimeth I, that he, as prove his tears, is wretched, woebegone. When Hassan heard his mother weeping and wailing, he wept also, and knocked at the door a loud knock. Quoth she, Who is at the door? And quoth he, Open. Whereupon she opened the door, and knowing him at first sight, fell down in a fainting fit. But he ceased not to tend her till she came to herself, when he embraced her, and she embraced him, and kissed him, whilst his wife looked on mother and son. Then he carried his goods into the house, whilst his mother, for that her heart was comforted, and Allah had reunited her with her son, versified with these couplets. Fortune had ruth upon my plight, pitied my long, long bane and blight, gave me what I would, life a sight, and set me free from all affright. So pardon I the sin that sin, need she in days evanish quite. E'en to the sin she sinned when she bleached my hair parting silver and white. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 793rd night, she pursued, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that Hassan with his mother then sat talking, and she asked him, How farest thou, O my son, with the Persian? Whereto he answered, O my mother, he was no Persian, but a Magian, who worshipped the fire, not the all-powerful sire. Then he told her how he dealt with him, in that he had journeyed with him to the mountain of clouds, and sewed him up in the camel skin, and how the vultures had taken him up and set him down on the summit, and what he had seen there of dead folk, whom the Magian had deluded, and left to die on the crest, after they had done his desire. And he told her how he had cast himself from the mountain-top into the sea, and Allah the Most High had preserved him, and brought him to the palace of the 7 princesses, and how the youngest of them had taken him to brother, and he had sojourned with them till the Almighty brought the Magian to the place where he had been, and he slew them. Moreover, he told her of the passion of the king's daughter, and how he had made prize of her, and of his seeing her in sleep, and all else that had befallen him upon the time when Allah vouchsafed them reunion. She wondered at his story, and praised the Lord, who had restored him to her in health and safety. Then she arose and examined the baggage and the loads, and questioned him of them. So he told her that was in them, whereat she joyed with exceeding joy. Then she came up to the king's daughter to talk with her, and bear her company. But when her eyes fell on her, her wits were confounded at her brilliancy, and she rejoiced and marvelled at her beauty and loveliness, and symmetry and perfect grace. And she sat down beside her, cheering her and comforting her heart, while she never ceased to repeat, Alhamdulillah, O my son, for thy return to me safe and sound. Next morning, early she went down into the market, and bought mighty fine furniture, and 10 suits of the richest raiment in the city, and clad the young wife, and adorned her with everything seemly. Then said she to Hassan, O my son, we cannot tarry in this town with all this wealth, for thou knowest that we are poor folk, and the people will suspect us of practicing alchemy. So come, let us depart to Baghdad, the house of peace, where we may dwell in the Caliph's sanctuary, and thou shalt sit in a shop to buy and sell in the fear of Allah, to whom might be might and majesty, and he shall open to thee the door of blessings with this wealth. Hassan approved her counsel, and going forth, straightway sold the house, and summoned the dromedaries, which he loaded with all his goods and gear, together with his mother and wife. Then they went down to the Tigris, where he hired him a craft to carry them to Baghdad, and embarked therein all his possessions and his mother and his wife. They sailed up the river with a fair wind for 10 days, till they drew in sight of Baghdad, in which they all rejoiced. And the ship landed in the city, where without stay or delay Hassan hired a storehouse in one of the caravanserais, and transported his goods thither. He lodged that night in the khan, and on the morrow he changed his clothes, and going down into the city inquired for a broker. The folk directed him to one, and when the broker saw him, he asked him what he lacked. Quoth he, I want a house, a handsome one, and a spacious. So the broker showed him the houses at his disposal, and he chose one that belonged to one of the wazirs, and buying it of him for 100,000 golden dinars, gave him the price. Then he returned to his caravanserai, and removed all his goods and monies to the house, after which he went down to the market, and bought all the mansion needed of vessels and carpets and other household stuffs, besides servants and eunuchs, including a little black boy for the house. He abode with his wife in all solace and delight of life 3 years, during which time he was vouchsafed by her 2 sons, one of him named Nasir, and the other Mansur. But at the end of this time he bethought him of his sisters, the princesses, and called to mind all their goodness to him, and how they had helped him to his desire. So he longed after them, and going out to the market streets of the city, bought trinkets and costly stuffs and fruit confections such as they had never seen or known. His mother asked him for the reason of this buying of these rarities, and he answered, I propose to visit my sisters, who showed me every kind of goodness, and all the wealth that I at present enjoy is due to their goodness and munificence. Wherefore I will journey to them and return soon, inshallah. Quoth she, O my son, be not long absent from me. And quoth he, Know, O my mother, how thou shalt do with my wife. Here is her further dress in a chest, buried underground in such a place. Do thou watch over it, lest haply she hap on it, and take it, for she would fly away, she and her children, and I should never hear of them again, and should die of grieving for them. Wherefore take my heed. O my mother, while I warn thee that thou name this not to her, thou must know that she is the daughter of the king of the Jinn, than whom there is not a greater among the sovereigns of the Jann, nor a richer in troops and treasure. And she is mistress of her people, and dearest to her father of all that he hath. Moreover, she is passing high-spirited. So do thou serve her thyself, and suffer her not to go forth the door, neither look out of the window nor over the wall. For I fear the air for her when it bloweth, and if aught befell her of the calamities of this world, I should slay myself for her sake. She replied, O my son, I take refuge with Allah from gainsaying thee. Am I mad that thou shouldest lay this charge on me, and I disobey thee therein? Depart, O my son, with heart at ease, and please Allah soon that thou shalt return in safety, and see her, and she shall tell thee how I have dealt with her. But tarry not, O my son, beyond the time of travel. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 794th night, she resumed, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when Hassan had determined to visit the princesses, he gave his mother the orders we have mentioned. Now, as fate would have it, his wife heard what he said to his mother, and neither of them knew it. Then Hassan went without the city, and beat the kettle drum, whereupon came the dromedaries, and he loaded 20 of them with rarities of all Iraq, after which he returned to his mother, and repeated his charge to her, and took leave of her and his wife and children, one of whom was a yearling babe, and the other 2 years old. Then he mounted and fared on without stopping, night or day, over hills and valleys and plains and wastes, for a term of 10 days, till on the 11th he reached the palaces and went in to his sisters with the gifts he had brought them. The princesses rejoiced at his sight, and gave him joy of his safety, whilst his sister decorated the palace within and without. Then he took the presents, and lodging him in a chamber as before, asked him of his mother and his wife, and he told them that she had borne him 2 sons. And the youngest princess, seeing him well and in good case, joyed with exceeding joy, and repeated these couplets. I ever ask for news of you from whatso breezes pass, and never any but yourself can pass across my mind. Then he abode with them in all honor and hospitality for 3 months, spending his time in feasting and merrymaking, joy and delight, hunting and sporting. So fared it with him. But as regards his wife, she abode with his mother 2 days after her husband's departure. And on the 3rd day she said to her, Glory be to God! Have I lived with him 3 years, and shall I never go to the bath? Then she wept, and Hassan's mother had pity on her condition, and said to her, O my daughter, here we are strangers, and thy husband is abroad. Were he at home, he would serve thee himself, but as for me, I know no one. However, O my daughter, I will heat thee water, and wash thy head in the Hammam bath, which is in the house. Answered the king's daughter, O my lady, hast thou spoken thus to one of the slave girls? She had demanded to be sold in the Sultan's open market, and had not abode with thee. Men are excusable because they are jealous, and their reason telleth them that if a woman go forth the house, happily she will do frowardness. But woman, O my lady, are not all equal and alike, and thou knowest that if a woman had a mind to aught, whether it be to the Hammam or what not else, none hath power over her to guard her or keep her chaste, or to bar her from her desire. For she will do whatso she willeth, and naught restraineth her, but by reason and her religion. Then she wept and cursed fate, and bemoaned herself and her strangerhood, till Hassan's mother was moved for ruth of her case, and knew that all she said was but truth, and there was nothing to do but to let her have her way. So she committed the affair to Allah, extolled and exalted be He, and making ready all that they needed for the bath, took her and went with her to the Hammam. She carried her 2 little sons with her, and when they entered, they put off their clothes, and all the women fell to gazing on the princess, and glorifying God, to whom belong might and majesty, for that he had created so fair a form. The women of the city, even those who were passing by, flocked to gaze upon her, and the report of her was noised abroad in Baghdad till the bath was crowded that there was no passing through it. Now it chanced there was present on that day, and on that rare occasion, was the rest of the women in the Hammam, one of the slave girls of the commander of the faithful, Harun al-Rashid, by name Tofa, the lutenist, and she, finding the Hammam overcrowded and no passing for the throng of women and girls, asked what was to do, and they told her of the young lady. So she walked up to her, and considering her closely, was amazed at her grace and loveliness, and glorified God, magnified be his majesty, for the fair forms he hath created. The sight hindered her from her bath, so that she went not farther in nor washed, but sat staring at the princess, till she had made an end of bathing, and coming forth of the caldarium, donned her raiment, whereupon beauty was added to her beauty. She sat down by the divan, whilst the women gazed upon her. Then she looked at them, and veiling herself went out. Tofa went out with her, and followed her, till she came where she dwelt, when she left her, and returned to the caliph's palace, and ceased not wondering till she went into Lady Zubaydah, and kissed the ground between her hands. Whereupon quoth her mistress, O Tofa, why hast thou tarried in the Hammam? She replied, O my lady, I have seen a marvel, never saw I it like amongst men or women, and this is what was distracted me, and dazed my wits, and amazed me, so that I forgot even to wash my head. Asked Zubaydah, and what was that? And Tofa answered, O my lady, I saw a damsel in the bath, having with her 2 little boys, like moons. I never espied her like, nor before her, nor after her. Neither is there a fellow of her form in the whole world, nor her peer amongst Ajams, or Turks, or Arabs. By the munificence, O my lady, and thou toldest the commander of the faithful of her, he would slay her husband and take her for him, for her like is not to be found among women. I asked of her maid, and they told me that he was the merchant Hassan of Bassorah hight. Moreover, I followed her from the bath to her own house, and I found it to be that of the wazir, with the 2 gates, one opening on the river and the other on the land. Indeed, O my lady, I fear lest the prince of true believers hear of her, and break the law, and slay her husband, and take love lassie with her. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 795th night, she continued, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when Tophah, after seeing the king's daughter, described her beauty to Lady Zubaydah, ending with, Indeed, O my mistress, I fear lest the prince of true believers hear of her, and break the law, and slay her mate, and take her wife. Zubaydah cried, Woe to thee! O Tophah, say me, doth this damsel display such passing beauty and loveliness, that the commander of the faithful should on her account barter his soul's good for his worldly lust, and break the holy law? By Allah, needs must I look on her, and if she be not as thou sayest, I will bid strike off thy head. O strumpet, there are in the caliph's seraglio 360 slave girls, after the number of the days of the year, yet is there none amongst them so excellent as thou describest. Tophah replied, No, by Allah, O my lady, nor is there like her in all of Baghdad, no, nor amongst the Arabs or the Dalamites, nor hath Allah, to whom might be might and majesty, created the like of her. Thereupon Zubaydah called for the Mansur, the eunuch, who came and kissed the ground before her, and she said to him, O Mansur, go to the wazir's house, that with the 2 gates, one giving onto the water and the other onto the land, and bring me the damsel who dwelleth there, also her children, and the old woman who is with her, and haste thou, and tarry not. Said Mansur, I hear, and I obey, and repairing to Hassan's house, knocked at the door. Quoth the old woman, Who is at the door? And quoth he, Mansur, the eunuch of the commander of the faithful. So she opened the door, and he entered and saluted her with the salam. Whereupon she returned her salute and asked his needs. And he replied, The Lady Zubaydah, daughter of Al-Qasim and queen spouse of the commander of the faithful, Harun al-Rashid, 6th of the sons of Al-Abbas, paternal uncle of the Prophet, whom Allah bless and keep, summoneth thee to her, thee and thy son's wife and her children, for the women have told her anent her and her beauty. Rejoined the old woman, O my lord Mansur, we are foreigner folk, and the girl's husband, my son, who is abroad and far from home, has strictly charged me not to go forth, nor to let her go forth in his absence, neither show her to any of the creatures of Allah Almighty, and I fear me, if I aught befall her, and he come back, he will slay himself. Wherefore thy favour, I beseech thee, O Mansur, require us not, of wherefore we are unable. Mansur retorted, O my lady, I knew aught to be feared for you in this. I would not require you to go. The Lady Zubaydah desire but to see her, and then she may return. So disobey not, or thou wilt repent, and like as I take you, I will bring you both back in safety, inshallah. Hassan's mother could not gainsay him, so she went in, and making the damsel ready, brought her and her children forth, and they all followed Mansur to the palace of the caliphate, where he carried them in and seated them on the floor before the Lady Zubaydah. They kissed ground before her, and called down blessings upon her. And Zubaydah said to the young lady, who was veiled, Wilt thou not uncover thy face, that I may look on it? So she kissed the ground between her hands, and discovered a face which put to shame the full moon in the height of heaven. Zubaydah fixed her eyes on her, and let their glances wander over her, whilst the palace was illumined by the light of her countenance. Whereupon the queen and the whole company were amazed at her beauty, and all who looked on her became jinn-mad, and unable to bespeak one another. As for Zubaydah, she rose, and making the damsel stand, strained her to her bosom, and seated her by herself on the couch. Moreover, she bade decorate the palace in her honor, and calling for a suit of the richest raiment, and a necklace of the rarest ornaments, put them upon her. Then said she to her, O liege lady of fair ones, verily thou astonishest me, and fillest mine eyes. What arts knowest thou? She replied, O my lady, I have a dress of feathers, and could I but put it on before thee, thou wouldst see me as one of the fairest of fashions, and marvel thereat, and all who saw it would talk of its goodliness generation after generation. Zubaydah asked, And where is this dress of thine? And the damsel answered, 'Tis with my husband's mother. Do thou seek it for me of her. So Zubaydah said to the old woman, O my lady, the pilgrimess, O my mother, go forth and fetch of us this feathered dress, that we may solace ourselves by looking on what she will do, and after take it back again. Replied the old woman, O my lady, this damsel is a liar. Hast thou ever seen of any of womankind with a dress of feathers? Indeed, this only belongeth to birds. But the damsel said to the Lady Zubaydah, As thou livest, O my lady, she hath a feather dress of mine, and it is in a chest which is buried in such a store closet in the house. So Zubaydah took off her neck a riviere of jewels, worth all the treasures of Khosrow and Caesar, and gave it to the old woman, saying, O my mother, I conjure thee by my life, take this necklace, and go and fetch us this dress, that we may divert ourselves with the sight thereof, and after take it again. But she sware to her that she had never seen any such dress, and wist not what the damsel meant by her speech. Then the Lady Zubaydah cried out at her, and taking the key from her, called Masrur, and said to him, as soon as he came, Take this key, and go to the house. Then open it, and enter a store closet, there whose door is such, and in the middlemost of it thou wilt find a chest buried. Take it out, and break it open, and bring me the feather dress which is therein, and set it before me. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 796th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the Lady Zubaydah, having taken the key from Hassan's mother, handed it to Masrur, saying, Take this key, and open such a closet, and then bring forth of it the chest, break it open, bring me the feather dress which is therein, and set it before me. Hearkening and obedience, replied he, and taking the key went forth, whereupon the old woman arose and followed him, weeping-eyed, and repenting her of having given ear to the damsel, and gone with her to the bath, for her desire to go thither was but a device. So she went with him to the bath, and opened the door of the closet, and he entered, and brought out the chest. Then he took therefrom the feather dress, and wrapping it in a napkin, carried it back to the Lady Zubaydah, who took it and turned it about, marveling at the beauty of its make. After which she gave it to the damsel, saying, Is this thy dress of feathers? She replied, Yes, O my lady, and at once, putting forth her hand, took it joyfully. Then she examined it, and rejoicing to find it whole as it was, not even a feather gone. So she rose and came down from beside the Lady Zubaydah, and taking her sons on her bosom, wrapped herself in the feathered dress, and became a bird, by the ordinance of Allah, to whom be might and majesty. Whereat Zubaydah marveled, as did all who were present. Then she walked with a swaying and graceful gait, and danced and sported and flapped her wings, whilst all eyes were fixed on her, and all marveled at what she did. Then said she with fluent tongue, Is this goodly, O my ladies? And they replied, Yes, O princess of the fair, and all thou dost is goodly, said she. And this, O my mistresses, that I am about to do is better yet. Then she spread her wings, and flying up with her children to the dome of the palace, perched on the saloon roof, whilst they all looked at her wide-eyed, and said, By Allah, this is indeed a rare and peregrine fashion. Never saw we the like. Then, as she was about to take flight for her own land, she bethought her of Hassan, and said, Hark ye, mistresses, and she improvised these couplets. O who hast quitted these abodes, and fairest leaf and light, to other objects of thy love, and fain and fastest flight, deemest thou that bidded I with you in solace and in joy, or that my days amid you were all clear of bane and blight? When I was captive ta'en of love, and snared in his snare, he made of love my prison, and he fared for me forthright. So when my fear was hidden, he made sure that ne'er should I pray to the one, the omnipotent, to render me my right. He charged his mother to keep the secret with all the care she could, in closet shut, and treated me with enemies despite. But I heard their words, and held them fast in memory, and hoped for fortune fair and will, and blessings infinite. My faring to the Hammam bath then proved to me the means of making minds of folk to be confounded at my sight. Wondered the bride of Al Rashid to see my brilliancy, when she beheld of me left and right with all beauty dight. Then quoth I, O, our caliph's wife, I was once wont to own a dress of feathers rich and rare, that did the eyes delight. And it were now on me that thou shouldest indeed see wondrous things, that would efface all sorrows and disperse all sores of white. Then deigned our caliph's bride to cry, Where's that dress of thine? And I replied, In house of him kept darkling as the night. So down upon it pounced Bassorah and brought it unto her, and when 'twas there, each feather cast a ray of beaming light. Therewith I took it from his hand, and opened it straightway, and saw its plumed bosom, and its buttons pleased my sight. And so I clad myself therein, and took with me my babes, and spread my wings, and flew away with all main and might, saying, O husband's mother mine, tell him when cometh he, and ever wouldest meet her, thou from house and home must flee. When she had made an end of her verses, the Lady Zubaydah said to her, Wilt thou come down to us, that we may take our fill of thy beauty, O fairest of the fair? Glory be to him who hath given thee eloquence and brilliance. But she said, Far be from me that the past return should see. Then said she to the mother of the hapless wretched Hassan, By Allah, O my lady, O mother of my husband, it irketh me to part from thee. But when as thy son cometh to thee, and upon him the nights of severance longsome shall be, and he craveth reunion and meeting to see, and when as breezes of love and longing shake him dolefully, let him come to the island of Wak to me. Then she took flight with her children, and sought her own country, whilst the old woman wept, and beat her face, and moaned and groaned till she swooned away. When she came to herself, she said to the Lady Zubaydah, O my lady, what is this thou hast done? And Zubaydah said to her, O my lady, the pilgrimess, I knew not that this would happen, and hast thou told me of the case, and acquainted me with her condition, I had not gainsayed thee. Nor did I know until now that she was of the flying jinn, else had I not suffered her to don the dress, nor permitted her to take her children. But now, O my lady, words profit nothing, so do thou acquit me of the offence against thee. And the old woman could do no otherwise than shortly answer, Thou art acquitted. Then she went forth, the palace of the caliphate, and returned to her own house, where she buffeted her face till she swooned away. When she came to herself, she pined for her daughter-in-law and her grandchildren, and for sight of her son, and versified these couplets. Your faring on the parting day drew many a tear from me, who must flying from the home long mourn in misery. And cried I for the parting pang and anguish like as fire, and tear floods chafed mine eyelids sore, that near the tears were free. Yes, this is severance. Ah, shall we e'er join return of you? For your departure hath deprived me my power of privacy. Ah, would they had returned to me in covenant of faith, and they return perhaps restore if past these eyne may see. Then arising, she dug in the house 3 graves, and betook herself to them with weeping all whiles of the day, and watches of the night. And when her son's absence was longsome upon her, and grief and yearning and unquieted waxed upon her, she recited these couplets. Deep in mine eyeballs ever dwells the phantom form of thee. My heart, when throbbing or at rest, holds fast thy memory. And love of thee doth never cease to course within my breast, a course of juices in the fruits which deck the branchy tree. And every day I see thee, not my bosom straitened is, and even censures excuse the woes in me they see. O thou, whose love hath gotten hold the foremost in the heart of me, whose fondness is excelled by mine insanity, fear the compassionate in my case, and some compassion show. Lo of thee makes me taste of death in bitterest pungency. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased saying her permitted say. And so do I cease my telling of this day, until it be morrow.